So,
Indeed.
Taz, can you tell me a little bit more about Essi and what you're doing?
Yes, I can. So Essi stands for Ethical, Safe, Sustainable and Inclusive. It's a sexual wellness brand, so it's a new brand of sex toys that has the ethical and sustainable part right at the forefront.
And why is that different?
So there's some amazing sex toys out in the market. However, there are quite a few that aren't sustainable, don't necessarily use the safest materials available. There is so much packaging, and the packaging is invariably plastic. And so I kind of was looking at this and thinking, there is so much waste, there is so much packaging that goes into landfill that doesn't necessarily have to do that. We don't need sex toys to be in plastic packaging. We don't need them to be in foil or polystyrene trays. It's just not necessary. It doesn't impact the toy in any way.
And when did you start thinking about this? Like, why do you care so much about this?
Well, as you know, I developed a brand previously, and one of the things I really wanted to do with that is make it feel like you were getting a gift when you bought the toy. And I think we achieved that really well. But in that, the packaging just seemed to swamp the toy, and whilst I tried really hard to reduce the amount of packaging, that was just built into what we were doing and producing, and I would sit there looking at it, and when I would take them home, then I'd chuck the packaging into the recycling or the landfill or into the rubbish, and I thought, God, this is just such a waste. It's such a waste. We don't need to do this. And so that got me thinking about that. The other part was obviously the inclusivity. I firmly believe, I'm really passionate about inclusivity and including our, rainbow communities, our disabled communities, people that don't necessarily are not catered to in this way, in this industry. So, yeah, that was...
I'd love to talk a little bit more about that, because I don't think people would think sex toys aren't inclusive. So, can you give me some examples of ways that what you're creating will be more inclusive for our rainbow communities?
I mean, it starts with a name, okay? Yeah. So if it's, her toys and his toys, well, that's not gender neutral at all. So, I honestly, if somebody doesn't identify as a she or a he, then is that toy not for them? And so that for me was really quite important, but also making sure that the toys can be used by anybody regardless of their genitalia. Honestly, it shouldn't matter, and sex toys can be used in lots of different ways, and it's about the whole body approach rather than just which genitalia you happen to possess. And so again, it's, there's a lot of talk in the industry and moving away from her toys, his toys, and we're calling them by their anatomical names, so vulva toys and penis toys. But that's just words. I don't think people are generally actually making concerted efforts to be inclusive. I'm involved in the rainbow community. I love the rainbow community. I want to advocate for them. And so for me, it's really important that they know that this is I'm not just gay washing.
Yeah.
That's really important to me.
Yeah, that's amazing. And why is sexual wellness so important to you?
Oh, goodness. Every aspect of our lives affects our sexual wellness. I was doing an interview recently, and I said, if you're not horny or hungry, you're not functioning as well as you could be. Because when you're healthy, invariably you're horny and hungry. And so I think that there is so much that affects our sexual wellness, trauma, our upbringing, depression, medication, stress, childbirth, everything. And our sexual wellness is a key component to our wellness, our overall wellness. I think it's really important that we understand that and start removing that taboo. And we've gone a long way. The taboo is going, but I want to remove the guilt around the having a sex toy, number one, but also ensuring that once you've got that and you could have this amazing orgasm, then you don't want to feel guilty about the actual toy you've got. So there's a lot of layers here, and I think that for me it was developing a brand that kind of encompassed and ticked some boxes personally for me that enabled me to deliver something beautiful to the market and to our communities that made them feel like this was for them.
I love it. And this is something that you've done in the past, and I think some of the feedback that you've historically gotten is really powerful as well, right? Do you want to share some of the sort of messages you've received when people have experienced toys that you've worked on before?
Totally. I've done I've done a lot of events and talked to the public when I'm at those events. And I had a friend that I hadn't seen for years Instagram me and said, look, I know I haven't talked to you for years, but I read an article about you and I bought one of the toys you manufactured, and I'm not trying to make you feel guilty or uncomfortable, but I've had uterine cancer and I'm okay, but things weren't great for me and I really was in a horrible place. And once I read the article, I went and bought this toy and you got my life back on track and you didn't even know it. And that just and I've had my girlfriends come to me and like where their husbands had an affair or whatever, and it's like I thought I was broken. He always made me feel like I was broken, and they weren't broken. They weren't broken. Of course they weren't. They just didn't know what their bodies were capable of, and the pleasure that they could potentially have because of a whole host of reasons. Could be lots and lots of things. And so I talk about it, anyone who will listen, to be fair, and about how important our sexual wellness is and how important it is for our young people to understand their bodies and to understand what gives them pleasure.
What feels good.
What feels good, because particularly for young wahine, if they understand what feels good, they're less likely to be coerced.
And it reminds me a lot of Cindy Gallup's work, around make love, not porn, and just knowing your body and being with people that care about how you're feeling, right?
And that comes from personal experience. When I first went on my sexual journey, I remember being with somebody and it was really uncomfortable, and I was like, I don't like this. This doesn't feel good. You're just inexperienced, was the response I got. I wasn't inexperienced. Well, I was, but that wasn't the reason it didn't feel good. It didn't feel good because it just wasn't working for me. So I think I wasn't experienced enough with my body back then. I don't want that for my children. I don't want that for anybody's children. I think it's important to own your pleasure.
And it's not just children, right? I think there was a beautiful comment you got back from someone who was 69 and said that, your article got her.
That made me cry. So she had never had a sex toy ever. And she read, the Women's Day did a piece about me. And so she read this and she ordered a toy and used it. And she said, I'm a single lady, I'm 69 years old, and you've given me some joy back in my life. And that's like, wow.
That's a great reason.
Wow.
To be doing what you're doing. Side question. What is the weirdest experience you've had taking sex toys onto an airplane?
Okay. I'm a woman of colour, in case you hadn't noticed. I get stopped at security on an inordinately regular basis. Right?
I'm sorry.
And so every time I travelled with toys, and I'd go for business trips, and the suitcase would be full of samples and toys, they'd always open my bag and it's like, what is it you do? I sell sex toys. Really? I'm like, yep. And what is this? Well, it's a studded paddle. Why? I did have once where I was called out from the lounge because there was a toy vibrating in my suitcase. And I'd just come back from the UK. So I'd done this long journey. I was in Auckland, coming back to Wellington, and I got a phone call. Said, "Have you just checked in on it?" "Yes, I have." And he's like, "There's something vibrating in your bag and your suitcase. We've had to move it from the conveyor belt." I said, "Don't worry, it's just a vibrator. Leave it alone. It'll die out soon." we can't do that. You have to come and switch it off.
Did they think it was a bomb?
I don't know. But I got down there and I was like, oh, God, it's just a vibrator. It's fine. And they were so embarrassed. I was like, it's okay, guys. It's fine. And I just zipped over my bag.
So many of them.
There's so many in here. Look. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stories. And I've been in some situations where I've gone into, like a establishment, a store, and they're like, oh, would you like to see the dungeon downstairs? It's like, yeah, sure, why not? And so
love to see what you got.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah,
fascinating. So yes, one day I'll write a book about it.
That would be great. And actually, like, even sharing some of these stories, I think would be hilarious.
There's some really cool stuff and very funny. There's a lot of funny stuff that happens, and largely in the industry, people are really cool and they're very open-minded and they're really quite honest.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of the retailers I worked with were really, really cool people.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping some of those will be stocking Essi at some stage because, I think that it's going to be an absolute flyer once we get it out there into stores. I think it's a niche that's missing in the sexual wellness market. I really do.
Can you talk me through what you're raising for right now on PledgeMe?
So what I'm raising for is to develop a run, our first production run of 5 or 6 toys that will encompass and be able to be used by all genders. That will be ethically manufactured. I've found an amazing ethical manufacturer. Will be sustainably manufactured and in fully home compostable packaging.
Amazing.
And so the money we're hoping to raise will allow us to get our first production run into market.
Yeah.
It's expensive to produce toys, and you've got to have a certain amount of order quantities and what have you to do a run, and so that's what I'd like to achieve.
And that's what you're offering people, right? The ability to get one of these sex toys.
Yes.
What else is on offer on the page?
So, I mean, not everybody wants a sex toy, so, really...
Who doesn't want a sex toy?
Guys, come on.
You don't have to pledge for yourself. You can pledge for anyone.
But there's the opportunity to have me, if you're in Wellington, host a toy party for you, which are always so much fun. They're just a hoot.
Yeah.
And I'll come and explain the toys, because sometimes when you go online, it's really overwhelming. You don't know what size something is. You don't necessarily know how it works. Sometimes you just need someone to explain it to you.
Totally.
That isn't going to make it icky.
Yeah.
And I honestly don't make it very icky at all. So it's easy to do. But so there's that. There's the opportunity to be a lifelong member of the Essi Club. And so that will tiered discounts, so 20% lifetime discount on every product.
Wow.
Merchandise. I've got retailer rewards where a retailer that pledges will get their first indent free of charge. So that will, they should be able to make that money back quite easily. But also I will go in and do a launch event with them, create social media specifically for that retailer. And just really help them put a roadmap to help them succeed in selling Essi. There's a few things, and I'm still kind of looking at how I can actually improve those and make them better. I'm open to feedback. So yeah,
and you can always add new rewards as you go. We find that's always like a good reason to go back out and update people.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to tell people about what you're up to?
Currently I'm just exploring how we can make Essi even more sustainable, and how we can actually limit the lifetime waste generated from the sex toys. And so that's still being worked on, and I just want to make sure that things don't end up back in the landfill, or not back in the landfill, but in the landfill, not used at end of life. And at end of life we can dispose of them safely, and so we're having the least impact on the planet.
Yeah.
So that's something that I'm just working on currently. Yeah.
So we can have fun, but not hurt the planet at the same time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. We shouldn't. Yeah. I just think that the world is changing, and we have created so much waste over the last 20 years, and nobody really needs to be doing that anymore. We can be better. We can be better. And in New Zealand we're great at that.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping that Kiwis will come on board, and we'll have the first sustainable sex toy brand coming out of New Zealand.
Yeah, love it. I think we should end there. That's the perfect call to action.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome.